welcome to another episode of the WP Crowd. Today we are continuing our series on the future of WordPress. And today we are talking about something pretty cool and kind of just how WordPress can evolve a little bit. But before I forget, first let's do some introductions. Carl, why don't you just go ahead and go first?
Hi, I'm Carl Alexander. I'm a PHP developer. I've been around the WordPress community since 2010. I write a lot on object-oriented programming and other advanced programming topics on my website, carlalexander.ca. So check it out.
Cool. And Chris?
I'm Chris Flannagan and developer for FlowPress starting Monday. I've been doing WordPress for a while, seriously for a couple of years. I blog about WordPress and NativeScript for mobile development on whoischris.com, and I blog about chicken wings on sarasotawings.com.
First, congratulations on the new job, by the way.
Thank you.
And I believe I saw a series on meatloaf, if I'm not,
I did a 5-day challenge on meatloaf because I hate meatloaf. I haven't eaten it in over 20 years and decided to give it another shot. And I was correct 20 years ago. It's still terrible.
All right. So what I want to talk about today is last week we kind of talked about the kind of future of WordPress and if it needs to grow at all. And this week I want to talk about it as it relates to other technologies. So Chris did a great series on the WP Crowd. If you guys click to the into our articles, you'll see that there's a series actually on WordPress and NativeScript. So essentially using NativeScript to create native applications. But that's not the only tech that really evolved or that is out there, right? So I was thinking about the future of WordPress and then how it should interact with other technologies that are out there. We go to WordCamp conferences, but there's all sorts of conferences out there with other technologies. So my main question is, do we adapt WordPress to fit the needs of other technology? So other technologies start using WordPress, therefore it grows? Or do we not adapt WordPress and then go out into the community and show them how they can use their technology with WordPress? Basically saying, do other people need to adapt and work with WordPress, or should WordPress adapt and work with other people? I kind of want to hear both sides if you guys have it. Chris, why don't we start with you, because I know that you had that NativeScript talk and some articles, so you kind of had some experience kind of diving into this, using new technology with WordPress then.
Yeah, WordPress is, like I said, took it serious about 2 years ago, so I didn't really get extremely comfortable with it till probably pretty recently. And the mobile app thing, there's needs. Everybody has needs. My clients had needs. I had ideas for apps, and so I wanted to get into that. And somebody pointed me to NativeScript, and I tried it out, and I loved it. And then came the point that a lot of these apps need to be data-driven. And the REST API, which is still young for WordPress, it's opened the door to let WordPress be not a blogging platform anymore and not just a website platform anymore, but be a data container. I mean, it's a way to have very well-structured data that can be retrieved and presented a million different ways by any other tool out there. And just toying with it in NativeScript really showed me the power of that. I think that's the future. I think that WordPress is going to continue. I mean, if you look at WordPress, its code base is awesome, but it has a lot of legacy in it that's, it's still migrating to better format. But I feel like the way its data is structured is just fantastic. Its user system's pretty solid. And so to be able to take the power of that data and not worry about much of the code base and just use it in any other technology is pretty freaking sweet. We've seen people doing the whole building a completely separate from WordPress front end that runs on the WordPress backend. I think that's more the future. I mean, I set up some blogs for my dad. So he's blogging about movies and stuff like that. And he went to meet somebody about some software that they provide for his company. And they're showing the software to him. He's like, oh, hey, that's WordPress. So, I mean, WordPress admin panels also becoming recognizable to people that don't know anything about the internet other than they use it to run their businesses, whatever their business does on it. So WordPress is going to continue growing and be more familiar, but at the same time, I think it's going to do a lot more behind the scenes with other technologies and platforms. You're never going to see WordPress as an app development platform. At least I don't see that happening. I guess it could, but it can be a big part of a big framework for driving data to apps and other things like that.
So in the concept of let's evolve WordPress to or let's adapt WordPress to be something that other technologies can use. You're saying that the REST API, and I agree with you, but you're saying the REST API is going to be that leap forward that WordPress needs to kind of allow other technologies to kind of work with WordPress.
I think it's already started. Yeah. I mean, the REST API is what kind of flipped the switch to make that possible. Trying to do it before the REST API would have been disastrous. You would have been building your own plugins and own little ways to feed content to different technologies. But the REST API kind of put in a standards in place in something that it literally just opened it up to a whole new world. I got Disney in my head now. But I just think that was definitely the trigger. And like I said, it's still in its infancy and it still has some issues. It's still not completely fully featured, but it's big enough now that it's very useful.
Yeah, and I mean, you could say that for in general, the whole kind of API first and API driven kind of businesses now is this kind of interaction. I mean, there's entire businesses that are built around like just networking APIs together. Like the classic one that comes to mind is Zapier, which is just like, hey, we'll just like offer you every API that exists, and then you can have a bunch of actions, and then it'll communicate with another API, and then it's left to your kind of creative devices to do whatever you want with that. And I mean, I think it's good that WordPress kind of approaches and is going that way, because obviously you want WordPress as a kind of data source that anybody else can use and combine in their own creative ways. So it's good because XML RPC is pretty dated. So you'd rather use something a bit more robust like REST and OAuth.
So where's the cutoff though? Where are we going to be like, hey, let's stop modifying WordPress and let other people modify themselves to work with WordPress? Or is that even a thing? Like, is that?
I don't think you can stop. Huh? I don't think you can stop. Like, I mean, think about it this way. Like, Chris had like a perfect example. His father he made a blog for his father. His father needs like a team and a bunch of plugins. The REST API is not gonna. I mean, you could do a REST-based team, like you've done many times in many tutorials, Roy. But what you could do, but you can't replace, let's say, a SEO plugin. You still need SEO. You still need Yoast, right? That's not going to go away. So the platform that is WordPress still needs to exist and still needs to be maintainable. One of the big points, and I think Chris kind of hit it too in passing, is I kind of laughed, is, the WordPress code base is legacy code, and it's always going to be legacy code. And the REST API is kind of a way to like kind of put it under the carpet, if you will, but it still needs to be maintained, because there are going to be use cases where you need to use just WordPress and not just the REST API.
So I don't want to get into a large REST API discussion because we've had a few and always have more, but do you feel like the REST API is kind of the field of dreams? Like, we built it, or not we, but, they built it, it's been built, and now all these technologies are going to come? Or should we be going out into the other communities and say, hey, WordPress has this thing now where you can use it and it's super cool now, and we want to play with the cool kids and the cool, in the cool yard. right now because we got this cool API thing. Like, should we be going out to other communities and kind of selling WordPress to them? Or should the REST API be enough to say, all right, we have this thing. If they want to use it, they'll use it.
I think we should be, as WordPress people, as ambassadors for the system, and wanting to reach out to other technologies, we should be kind of being that ambassador. Like I was thinking not even 2 nights ago, and I'll probably start on it soon, I want to build a NativeScript library or plugin that has lots of tools and shortcuts to use the WordPress REST API, and then I'll present it that way on the repositories out there. I think that way I think a lot of people would appreciate that because they'll be able, they already know WordPress enough to build their data out in it, and then they'll have an easy library for communicating with the REST API. And then we'll get more contributors, and that'll just be one way to kind of push the whole usefulness of the back end of WordPress out there. But yeah, I think us as developers and ambassadors for WordPress, we should take some responsibility in building tools to make it easier to, gateway with newer technologies.
Do you think, I agree, do you think that, do you think it does enough? Do you think the API is enough to keep WordPress kind of relevant with other newer technologies? Or do you think maybe it's not enough, or more importantly, do you think it's come too late at a date? Like other technologies have already evolved so much, and they have, that WordPress is going to have a hard time staying relevant even with the API because it's just kind of too late for it.
I think owning your data is going to always stay relevant. I know it's not relatively like technology related, but I think it's an issue that comes back and forth, especially when you look at platforms like Medium, Vine that shut down recently is a good highlight of this. When you put all your eggs behind a wall, you lose some of that freedom to own what you've created, which to me is super important. And I think for all of us here is super important. Like we obviously are all developers, but we're also all content creators ourselves, and making sure that what we've put time and sweat and tears and blood in stays our own and isn't lost for some reason because some company couldn't figure out a business model or burned their cash too quickly is important. So I think the topic comes back relatively often, but it's always something to keep in mind.
Okay. And I'm just kind of curious to see what would happen. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen in the future here, because from a standpoint of WordPress, WordPress in the new tech realm doesn't get the best love or doesn't get the most love. So I'm curious to see how, how some of these, how to explain this, how they're going to actually adapt to WordPress. Like, showing them cool technologies. Like Chris's work is awesome. And I think is a really good example, actually. And I know we've said this already a few times, yay for Chris. But like, I don't think people even knew that this API thing existed. And then he wrote a couple tutorials, and now NativeScript's actual like documentation page has links out to his tutorials. So I think that's something that we're really gonna have to focus on as we want to keep WordPress moving more relevant as it gets, as we continue down the path. I'm a firm believer in the API. I've been using it since kind of day one. And I think that it's definitely going to help keep WordPress relevant for at least another 5 years or so, as it gets more and more evolved. And yeah, Carl, you made a good point. I think owning your own data versus kind of not owning your own data is going to play a big role in the long run as well. As people are moving to more cloud-based services and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
They don't own their data anymore. That's, or as people build stuff off of Squarespace and Wix. It's just like, okay, I don't actually own any of this. So I think that's going to play a big role, and I'm curious to see how it's going to all roll out in the next few years. Kind of the last question, as far as adaptation goes. Let's say for whatever reason it doesn't take. People don't like the REST API. People are like, no, F this, I'm done with WordPress. What do you think would happen? Like, do you think other technologies would move on kind of without WordPress? Or do you think WordPress would evolve again? And should it keep evolving itself as technology changes? Or as like newer technology comes out?
I don't know if Chris has anything to say. I mean, I have a bit of some thoughts on it. Like the main thing that, at least to me, and that's one thing that I didn't really answer in the first question. I mean, it ties back to the first question, which is, should WordPress adapt or should others adapt to it? If we just look, my expertise is obviously PHP. So if you look at PHP, the overall rest of the community did not wait for WordPress. Like PHP just kind of moved on. They're like, okay, WordPress, you have a different set of priorities that doesn't really mix and match with what we want. We're gonna just move ahead way faster than you can catch up, and they just off they went. And thankfully, it's good that they did that, because I think it gave like PHP as a language a very strong second wind, especially if you look at Laravel. Laravel is really, really, I'm a big fan of Symfony, but if you look at the appeal of PHP with coders of different degrees of skill, like Laravel is what really kind of ties everything together really nicely. It's kind of the Ruby on the Rails of PHP, but a lot of it ties into these this willingness to move ahead, and also they work together. So like, should WordPress do its own thing or not? I mean, this is a debate that comes up often. I had it in San Diego when I did the interview for AWP. It's PHP has this thing called PHP standard recommendations, which are short for PSR, which are just a way coding standards and a whole bunch of interface and classes and way of functioning that makes all the different libraries work better together. And for better or worse, WordPress does not follow those, and that comes up every so often. So I would rather if WordPress kind of moved towards that, but I'm not really holding my breath.
Yeah, I mean, updating WordPress, getting WordPress up to date with the latest standards is not going to be something that's going to be easy, but you know, we're slowly getting there. I mean, 4.7 is removing Netscape support, so I mean, slowly but surely, we'll get there. So that's about all the time we have for today. Thank you guys for joining me on the Repeat Crowd, and for everyone watching, join us next week. I think we'll either continue on this series or maybe switch it up a little bit. But thank you guys again. I'll see you guys next week.
Cheers.